こんにちは、ハリケーンフットボールです。今回の教材は、リバプールの遠藤航に関する動画です。リバプールはプレミアリーグ優勝に大手をかけており、今夜にでも優勝が決定する状況です。優勝することはもう 100% であり、いつするかだけの状況の中で、リバプールファンも例に漏れず、すでに移籍市場の話が騒がしくなってきています。今回はザ・レッドメン TV から、リバプール専門のジャーナリストであるデビッド・リンチをゲストに迎えて、夏の移籍市場について、簡単に話しています。誰かが抜けることによる穴埋めが第一優先であり、それ以外で、どのポジションがアップグレードできるのか、という観点で話していると思いますが、そういう観点では、中盤の補強の優先度はかなり低いと話しています。実際にどのように話しているのか、チェックしてみましょう。
Okay, let's move on to some incomings then, shall we? Obviously, we know on that topic, Mamardashvili is done. He will be arriving at the football club, having helped keep Valencia in La Liga, which looked a little bit doubtful at one point. So let's move on. We just touched upon the left-back situation. Let's do that. I think for a while, Andy Robertson said this recently, actually, Liverpool have been linked to every single left-back in world football, which was true for a bit. However, now it isn't. It is all Kerkez, it looks like.
Yeah, but I would caution against too much certainty on this one. I know 100% he's on the radar. He's a player that they like. But I also think kind of price point's a little high, and I wonder whether they might look elsewhere. There's other interesting Kerkez there as well. So, I just haven't had anyone kind of say to me nailed on, yeah, he's going to, it's like Alexis McAllister where you hear about it 4 months earlier and then it definitely is nailed on to happen. I'm not sure that's quite the case. I'm just keep an eye on Aït-Nouri is all I'm saying. He might end up being Kerkez, but I just think that there could be a change there in terms of because of what the prices will look like and what they think they can get. Maybe some slight question marks, although these are my question marks, not the recruitment staff over maybe his attacking output, but we'll kind of see with that one. But he's 100% on the list. Yeah. And so again, he'll be in that kind of top 5 that they've got on the shortlist. So it could easily be him, but also, don't be shocked if it's not him.
Okay, interesting. Let's quickly touch upon Dean Huijsen. Obviously, we've done a big chunk on him earlier on, so not him specifically, but the needs or sort of the desire to go and sign another centre-back, a young one. Is that Liverpool's outright stance? Is it because they see him as a special case and quite unique and a talent they can't avoid? Because Liverpool have got tendencies to do that. Obviously, Lenny Yoro was on the radar for a bit last summer. They often look at opportunistic opportunities, and he will be one of them as well. Or are Liverpool, pre-planning for a potential Ibrahim Konate situation? How do you view that?
I don't think it's at all. I think the Konate situation is in the thinking in terms of we need to maybe be prepared for that to happen and whatnot. But I don't think this young centre-half maybe is linked to it. I did it myself actually talking about it earlier as I touched on Konate's situation. But I don't think it's in their minds kind of we need a Huijsen to come in and replace Konate because I don't think he's ready to do that, by the way. I think Konate is a world-class centre-half and Huijsen's got a lot of potential, but he's maybe not quite there yet. Mm-hmm. What this is they've wanted a young centre-half for a long time, and I think back to last summer with the Lenny Yoro links, if the money hadn't been crazy that Manchester United had thrown at him, that Liverpool would have been there and they were definitely interested in him. I know they've been watching Diamande at Sporting. I think of Kouliarakis is another one. There's quite a few young centre-halves that they are keeping an eye on. This has been a need that they've thought something they wanted for a while really, and it is with the mindset of kind of Joe Gomez is probably going to move on, and so you need another, and the ideal is that you put them in that kind of 3rd or 4th choice role and then they grow, and then that you've got a successor then to kind of you guys who are there, who are the experienced ones who are ready to start. So it's been something they've been looking at for a while. They didn't need it in the end last summer because Yoro went for too much money. Joe Gomez didn't go in the end, but this summer there's an expectation he will go, and again that spot is opening up and they've been looking for a while for a young centre-half. So even if it's not him, even if he does go elsewhere, I still think that's an area Liverpool will look to strengthen with that particular profile as well.
Interesting, I like that. Okay, let's quickly do the striker. I say quickly, it might not be quick, because that is the glaringly obvious. I mentioned the word upgradable before. That's that in this. With Darwin Núñez, we've discussed. Diogo Jota could fall into that category as well. Heaven forbid, Luis Diaz may well leave, and all of a sudden you're 3 central striking options because Gakpo's not that anymore. Obviously, Chiesa expecting to leave. Mo Salah doesn't do that either. We are desperate for a striker. The question is, who? But also, the question also is, how big, I guess, because there's so much work to be done. We're going through it now. can Liverpool go marquee levels of signing 100 million plus, or does it have to be more in keeping with what we do generally, which is, your 40 to 70 bracket? How do you see all this?
Well, I think in terms of the top marquee level, we're obviously talking about Alexander Isak.
Oh, really?
I guess, yeah.
Yes,
I've been sceptical about that one for a while, not in terms of Liverpool liking him, because it's obvious everyone in the building thinks he's absolutely unbelievable and what a signing he would be. But in terms of the likelihood of getting him out of Newcastle, even before they were going to get Champions League football, I was sceptical because they were in such a strong contractual situation with him, 3 years left, and having won a trophy as well, which I think kind of helps. But they're now going to get Champions League football as well. So I just think people can kind of write that one off in their minds, unfortunately. But so I think that's going to bring you down, because then the market, really, you look out there, there's not the obvious candidate who you could spend 100 plus on. So I think it's probably going to be in that lower bracket just because of that. But this is going to be an interesting one. I think there's huge pressure on this signing. I think it's the most important one they've got to get right this summer, because I think it's the one where there's the biggest potential leap in the quality of the team overall that they can secure if they get this right. And the number 9 market, I don't think it's really obvious outside of Isak, who you go and guarantees you that level of goals and quality of performance. So, this is a massive one, really. And maybe they'll surprise us and maybe go down the route of kind of getting more of a forward who can play centrally. I know Diaz has done that, but maybe someone who's a bit of a better fit for doing that. And you look at like PSG this season with Dembele in that role, maybe they're going to think around those, that's going to be the thinking there, because I don't think the number 9 market is full of obvious successes outside of Isak. Question marks over Seshko in terms of how raw he is. Gyökeres, can he do it in the outside of the Portuguese league? Osimhen, what are his wage demands like? I just think there's so many question marks out there on the potential targets. So I think big pressure on this one, and there's also many other clubs in for a number 9 as well. So it's going to be fascinating to see how that shakes out.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, but as you say, I agree. I don't think there is an outstanding candidate away from Isak, and I just don't think that's doable, unfortunately. The right back, we've both said there probably should be a signing in that department, because Conor Bradley can be the first choice, fine, but who supplements that, I guess? Now, Joe Gomez was to stick around, that helps. Short of that, we've seen Curtis Jones drop in there, we've seen other people drop in there as well, but I just can't quite pinpoint the profile of player. Do you get somebody of a similar age who can compete, week in, week out, or do you go a bit stopgappy and sign somebody a bit older? I can't quite put my finger on what Liverpool do here.
Yeah, it's interesting because as well, if you would think in traditional sense, if you have your first choice right back and then the guy behind them can be a few years younger and ready, but a few years younger than Conor Bradley is kind of a 15-year-old. So I don't think they're going to do that. So I agree, not clear and not easy to know what the profile is. I wonder whether in an ideal situation they'd say, the centre half we sign can play right back and just kind of plug that gap in that way, and hope you get a full season out of Conor Bradley, pretty much. That will be the aim. But no clear links there yet, or anything I've kind of heard that gives us a good kind of feel on that. And the reason, I guess, for that is that no one at Liverpool wants to admit that Trent's going yet. So it's kind of hard to get that information out at the moment. But I agree that is a really interesting one in terms of the profile they end up with there, because I know they've been linked to Martin Fernandes at the moment, and again, but he's around Conor Bradley's age. So how does that work? And that will be a really interesting one.
It's going to be interesting on the flip side, sort of how you sell whoever comes in to Conor Bradley in a way.
Yeah.
Because he's earned his stripes. He's sort of waited patiently for this opportunity to be the number 1. Liverpool may well have already had a conversation that suggests he will be that, and then you bring somebody in a couple of years older, and you go, well, hang on, what's going on? It's odd. Any more positionally? Any more players? And on top of all that, I've got to ask you, because I ask about this kid every single week, Stefan Bajcetic.
Yeah, so that kind of links into one more position, actually. I guess the kind of central midfield is one where I think people would like to see some spending done and a big signing made, and I see all the links to Adam Wharton, for example. So
it's the deeper one. Sorry to interrupt. It's the deeper one as well, which again where Bajcetic, because with all this work to do, Liverpool could easily look at Bajcetic and go, well, that just solves that problem, and he's the backup, he's the understudy with Vitaro Endo, potentially with James McConnell, even that's that dealt with. Or do you look at Wharton? Do you look at Belieber? Because it's still a stuck out. That's where I can't quite work that out either.
No, so my thinking on this is kind of, I think all the talk around Wharton, for example, definitely a player Liverpool like. I know they were tracking him at Blackburn, but And so they'll have watched him at Palace, and he's still absolutely brilliant. So, but the problem is he's probably going to cost, you're hearing numbers like 100 million, which, given for his homegrown player of that quality, I kind of get why Palace are taking that stance. But it gives them, for Liverpool, I just think, and I know people don't like this, but I just don't think the midfield is going to be at the top of their priority list coming into this summer. They're going to say, well, we've got, our four who have primarily started and rotated in there. We might lose Endo, so we need to replace him, but we can't replace him with a Wharton, because I don't know how you sell that to him in terms of, okay, people might say he comes in as a nailed-on starter, and that's fair enough, but which one of the four are you telling is not getting anywhere near the team anymore then? And, is that a conversation you need to be having in a summer where, for me, the biggest gains can be made at centre-forward and left-back? I just don't think that midfield profile is going to be someone who's an absolute world beater, like a Baleba again. I don't think he will be on the radar for that reason. I think it's going to be, if Endo goes, to you either take a look at Bajcetic and see if he can do it over pre-season, and they will have a look at him, or you find someone again who is kind of in that stopgap kind of market and try and find someone who can do that. Maybe, I think in an ideal world they'll get someone who can play a bit more than Endo has, someone who's got a little bit more trust in the manager, who's a bit more comfortable in possession than Endo was, and so can dominate in that part of the pitch in terms of with the ball. But I don't think it's going to be that top end. That would really surprise me, given how many other areas of the pitch you've got to address and how much higher up the priority list they are.
Yeah, absolutely concur with all of that. And again, I think Bajcetic stylistically is more of a fit for what Arne Slot wants and needs.
He's very interesting. I think it was very much said from people at Liverpool when he went out on loan last summer that it's just because of the fitness. We want to, get him out there, get him back up to speed. But they're going to get a real look at him now, and it's kind of, has he actually moved up the pecking order? Do they think he's ready? And I don't know.
Well, the Austria time would suggest not.
Yeah,
I know Pep Lins ends up losing his job at Salzburg, so it's hard to sort of get a real gauge on how that all went. But he ends up leaving the football club himself, and then the last Palmas didn't work, but all of a sudden is working again.
Yeah, he's playing a bit better.
Exactly,
but it's the speed with which he was loaned out in the summer kind of makes me think. Slot taking one look at him there and maybe thought, not for me. I don't know, and I haven't personally watched him in any of his loan spells, to be honest. So I'm not quite sure about where he's up to, really, apart from hearing that he is playing quite well recently. But I don't know. It just wouldn't shock me if that was kind of an Endo out and then someone else to come in, but not for 100 million. That's for sure.
There's enough money to be spent elsewhere. And I don't like saying that either, particularly, but it's true.
次は解説です。相変わらずスカウス英語のアクセントが強く、何言っているのかわからないところがありますね。以前も何度か解説したボキャブラリーもありますが、今回も便利な表現や面白い表現もありましたので、本日の解説をチェックしてみましょ
う。Is that Liverpool's outright stance?
アウトライトは、英語で完全に、はっきりとという強い意味を持つ副詞と形容詞で使われる単語です。例えば、完全拒否。側近購入、圧倒的勝利など、すべてにおいて中途半端がなく、きっぱり決まる感じを表し、ビジネス英語でもカジュアルな会話でもよく使われます。全部まとめて一気にというニュアンスがあるので、特にスピード感や確実さを強調したいときに使うと自然です。
Is that Liverpool's outright stance? Is that Liverpool's outright stance?
Maybe be prepared for that to happen and whatnot.
ワトノットは、英語で何々などやその他いろいろという意味をカジュアルに言う表現です。例えば、映画や音楽やその他もろもろという感じで、列挙したものの後に軽く付け足します。アンドワトノットというと、何々とかそんなものという、ちょっと曖昧で柔らかいニュアンスを出せます。会話ではすごく自然に使われるので、使えると一気に英語らしさが増すでしょう。フォーマルな文章にはあまり向かないので、主に日常会話やカジュアルなやり取りで使うのがポイントです。
Maybe be prepared for that to happen and whatnot. Maybe be prepared for that to happen and whatnot.
Because that is the glaringly obvious.
グリアリングリーは非常に目立ってや明らかにという強いニュアンスを持つ副詞です。特に悪いことや失敗、問題点などが誰の目にもわかるくらいはっきりしているときに使われます。例えば、グリアリングリーオブビアスであからさまに明白という意味の表現がとてもよく使われ、ビジネスでもニュースでも問題点を指摘するときなどにぴったりな表現です。ちょっと強めの印象を与えるので、カジュアルな場面でも使いすぎには注意しましょ
Because that is the glaringly obvious. Because that is the glaringly obvious. Heaven forbid Luis Diaz may well leave.
Heaven forbid は、そんなことを来てほしくないという強い気持ちを込めた表現です。もともとは、Heaven、つまり、神様がそれを禁じますようにという願いから来ています。例えば、もし負けたらどうしよう。でも絶対負けたくないというような場面でよく使われます。話し手の不安や恐れを柔らかく、自然に表現できる便利なフレーズです。日常会話からニュース、ビジネスシーンまで幅広く使われるので、覚えておくと便利でしょ
う。Heaven forbid Luis Diaz may well leave. Heaven forbid Luis Diaz may well leave.
So it's going to be fascinating to see how that shakes out.
シェイクアウトは、文脈によって振り払う。最終的にどうなる。市場から淘汰される。というような意味で使われます。特に会話やニュースでは、この先どうなるか見てみようという意味で使われることが多いです。また、ビジネスの場では、弱い企業が市場から淘汰されるという厳しい意味でも使われます。柔らかい場面からシリアスな場面まで幅広く使える表現なので、使い方をしっかり押さえておくと便利です。
Also, it's going to be fascinating to see how that shakes out. Also, it's going to be fascinating to see how that shakes out.
Yeah. And because, you know, he's earned his stripes.
Earn one's stripe は、努力や実績によって正式に認められることを表す英語表現です。もともとは軍隊用語で、実力をつけて昇進すると、階級章であるストライプがもらえることに由来しています。今ではビジネス、スポーツ、日常会話など、幅広いシーンで、正当に認められたという意味で使われています。単に、頑張っただけではなく、結果を出して周囲に認められたというニュアンスが強いのが特徴です。
Yeah.
And because, you know, he's earned his stripe. Yeah. And because, you know, he's earned his stripe.
Who's an absolute will be.
Will be は、まだそうなっていないけれど、将来そうなる予定の人や物を表します。例えば、will be star で、未来のスターや、will be manager で、未来のマネージャーのように、これから大きな活躍が期待される人物に対して使われます。日常会話やスポーツニュース、ビジネスシーンでも幅広く登場します。未来の可能性をポジティブに強調する表現なので、覚えておくと非常に便利です。
One who's an absolute will beat, who's an absolute will beat, who is kind of in that stopgap kind of market.
ストップアップは、一時的な対策や仮の対応を意味する単語です。本来の目的や理想とは違うけれど、今すぐ必要な穴埋めとして使われるものを指します。例えば、急に人が足りなくなった時に臨時スタッフを雇う場合も、まさしくストップアップです。ビジネスでもスポーツでも頻繁に使われる実用的な表現です。
Who is kind of in that stopgap kind of market, who is kind of in that stopgap kind of market.
いかがでしたか？良くも悪くも、スーパーサブとしてのポジションが、遠藤航ほど快くできる選手はいないでしょうし、サブのポジションでも全力で準備し続けられるのは、若手の選手かベテランの選手であり、スタメンの選手をアップグレードするようであれば、やはり1億ポンド級のワールドクラスになるでしょうし、そうなればサブに落ちた選手がまた移籍することになるのでしょうから、今の状況で遠藤航のポジションをわざわざ入れ替える必要性はないのでしょう。遠藤航にとっても、結局は別のクラブに移籍するという選択になる可能性は低くはないと思いますが、今の遠藤であれば、どのチームに行っても楽しみでしかないので、これからの移籍市場も楽しみたいと思います。本日もご視聴いただきありがとうございました。またすぐにお会いしましょう。